You ever notice how the word fascist is just everywhere these days? It gets slapped on political opponents, on new laws, even on entire countries. But what does it actually mean? Well, it turns out that really depends on who you ask. So how did we get here? How did one of the most loaded words of the 20th century just break apart to the point where we can't even agree on what we're fighting about anymore? To get our heads around this, we've got to go back in time a bit. The author of our source material, he takes us back to his college days, a time when fascism had a pretty clear, settled definition in political science. It wasn't just a random insult you threw around. It was a specific thing, a historical system you could point to in a textbook. So what was that original definition? All right, let's start right there with that original meaning, the one that was taught in universities for decades. This is our baseline, you know? We need to understand this before we can figure out how everything got so tangled up. Okay, the key word here, the one that would have been underlined in your old textbook, was corporatism. This was the economic engine of historical fascism. Now, it's not about big corporations like we think of today. The idea was that society is like a single body, a corpus. In this system, private businesses weren't shut down, nope, but they were forced to serve the goals of the state. So your factory, it was yours on paper, but its real boss was the nation. And this is how fascism sold itself as a kind of third way, something different from both capitalism and communism. See, communism says the state owns everything, right? The factories, the farms, the whole shebang. Fascism said, nah, you can keep your company, but it has to work for national glory. It keeps the outer shell of capitalism, but totally hollows it out, swapping the profit motive for the state's big agenda. That distinction is absolutely crucial. So, if the definition was once that clear, what on earth happened? Well, over the last few decades, that single academic term just cracked right down the middle, leaving us with two completely contradictory definitions that most people use today. And boom, here it is. This slide lays out the entire communication breakdown. On one side, you've got what the author calls the normie view. For them, fascism is simple. It's Hitler, it's Nazis. And anti-fascism, that's the GIs who stormed the beaches of Normandy. But on the other side, you have the activist view. And here, fascism isn't some historical bad guy. It's the very structure of our society: borders, flags, tradition. And just look at the disconnect. The symbols of anti-fascism for one group are the literal symbols of fascism for the other. For the normie, this whole idea is just baked into the American identity. It's in the stories our grandparents told. It's in all those old war movies. During the Cold War, America saw itself as the world's #1 anti-fascist nation. So for this group, calling America itself fascist just doesn't compute. It's a total contradiction. But for the activist, that same history is actually the problem. They don't see fascism in goose-stepping soldiers. They see it in systems of power they believe are fundamentally oppressive. So in this worldview, being an anti-fascist isn't about defending America. It's about dismantling its traditional structures from the inside out. Now, these two views didn't just pop up out of nowhere, right? They each have their own unique histories, their own intellectual family trees. And if we want to understand why they're so opposed, we have to understand where they came from. You can think of the normie perspective as getting a series of firmware updates over the years. After fascism was defeated in 1945, the main enemy for the next 50 years was communism. Then, after 9/11, it became Islamist terrorism. Each update reinforced this core idea that America is the good guy, the defender against foreign evil ideologies. The activist lineage, though, it's drawing from a completely different library. Its intellectual roots aren't really in the fight against Hitler. They're in anti-colonial theories and Maoist thought, which saw Western nations themselves as the oppressive occupiers. So for them, the real fight isn't against some enemy overseas, it's against the status quo right here at home. And this quote from the source material just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures this tragic disconnect. You have two groups, both looking at the exact same American flag, and one sees a symbol of liberation, while the other sees a symbol of oppression. They are operating in two completely separate moral universes. Okay, so here's the crucial point. This isn't just some dusty academic debate over definitions. This war over a word has massive, real-world consequences for whether we can even function as a country. The #1 consequence is a total breakdown in communication. When one side screams, "We have to fight fascism," and they mean things like borders and tradition, and the other side hears, "We have to fight actual Nazis," Well, there's no common ground. There's no conversation to be had. We're just shouting at each other in different languages. And what fuels this breakdown is a deep sense of hypocrisy on both sides. The author points to what they call a NIMBY paradox, not in my backyard. They use this example. California is a state that talks a big game about inclusion, but its black population is only 7%, which is actually one of the lower rates in the US. And it's that perceived gap between what people say and what they do that just deepens the distrust and makes any kind of real dialogue feel impossible. The author uses this great metaphor. Think of the word fascism like an old skateboard. It used to be a specific thing, right? Built for a specific purpose. But now it's been totally repurposed. It's been emptied of its original meaning, corporatism, and it's been filled up with a bunch of new ideas. And now it's just used as a weapon in a totally different fight. And here is the ultimate mind-bending irony of it all. Both sides genuinely see themselves as patriots on a holy crusade. One group truly believes they're saving America from a kind of rising Maoist-style communism. The other group truly believes they're saving America from a rising Nazi-style fascism. Both of them think they're the real anti-fascists. Both think they're the true defenders of democracy. And their definitions are completely, totally irreconcilable. And that leaves us with a really, really unsettling question. Words, they're the glue that holds a society together. They let us debate, compromise, build something shared. But when a word as powerful and as important as fascism loses all its shared meaning, what happens to the glue? What's left to hold anything together?